Hi, everyone. This is Rob Krecak. I'm so glad that I got to be on Back to Basics today. I really felt like the podcast was a way for me to express myself, and I really wanted to let everyone know that me being back to basics or getting back to basics is something that I really live in my entire life. It's something that's served me really well, and it really has helped me simplify my life and make things much easier. So I invite you guys to like and subscribe to Back to Basics. Super appreciate you, Girish, for having me, and hope you guys have a great day.
Hi, folks. My name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. We're almost done, aren't we? I mean, we're just like a 1 week away from the end of Back to Basics for season 2. We're going to be talking about human first, or is it human second, or even third? You tell me. I mean, why don't you decide when you hear this episode? We don't think of humans first. We always think of them as second because we always think of other people as that we need to help others instead of ourselves, right? That's the first thing. When you first think of human first. But today we're going to talk about it a little differently, aren't we? We're not going to go into Adam and Eve, and we're not going to talk about the Bible or anything like that. We're actually going to be talking about you. We're going to talk about the work-life balance that we all have, the 4-day week. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that with our guest today, and his name is Rob. Amazing guy. We spoke with him maybe 3 weeks back, 4 weeks back. I really don't know, but it's such a long time ago. But it's an amazing person, and I still chatted with him right before this call. Let's bring him on. So, Rob, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Girish. I really appreciate you and looking forward to chatting. Really grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again, Rob, for coming here. And before we start all the details, as I mentioned in the intro, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Yeah, so to me, back to basics means thinking about first principles or core principles and reducing something to its most basic sense so that you can, make that thing easier for you or easier for you to do. And I really try to do this in a lot of areas of my life. My wife, my wife and I were, kind of laughing because of when we just moved from Denver to Chicago, and I was like, we need to get rid of as many things as possible because I just want to simplify our life. And I really, that really is something that I believe is very helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you again, Rob, for explaining moving from one state to the other, and it is definitely a struggle. And you and I did talk about this briefly on the pre-call, so thank you again for sharing that today. You know, when you came up with this website called Humans First, the first thing came in my mind is why not second or third? I mean, that's the first question. So why humans first?
Yeah. So the name of my company came about because I read this statistic, and this is measured by Nielsen, the company that has been measuring this statistic for about 50 years. So it's super reliable. In America, the average person today spends 12 hours and 21 minutes a day in front of screens and media. Put it another way, we are now spending 3/4 of our waking lives every single day, so that's 7 days a week, in front of screens and media. And so by looking at it, what's essentially happening is humans are putting technology first before other humans. We're spending more time with devices than we are with other human beings. And I think that this is kind of a wake-up call for society, right? That 50,000 years ago when we were cavemen and cavewomen, we spent 90% of our time with other people all day, all hours of the day. And so we're now spending that time that we used to spend with humans with people, and that is just not the way we were meant to be. And I think that that is really having a lot of unforeseen repercussions with humanity that we're not even aware of or understand are happening. And so the name of my company is to first of all bring awareness to that, but also to help serve as a reminder that we are here, and the most joy and happiness and meaning and purpose in our lives comes from connecting with and being with other people and putting them first in our lives. And I really hope that people come away from this podcast and think a little bit differently about that, by the end of it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because you and I talked about this during the pre-call, and you and I are pretty much on the same wavelength. But there are certain things that we do day to day, or even recreation, for that matter, when it comes to technology. Right? It kind of does help us. But I think the problem is that we go too much of it instead of just what we need versus greed. Right? What are your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just want to be clear that I'm not an opponent of technology. I love technology. In fact, I built my first computer when I was in middle school. And so what I always say is I'm not anti-technology, I'm pro-humanity. And I do agree with your point about balance, right? And I look at technology as a tool, and tools can, any kind of tool, right, can be used for good things or for bad things. And I do think there's many, many things that technology does that really do serve us well and that enhance our lives and make it better. But I also think that the average person has eclipsed or surpassed the amount of time that they need to spend with technology in order to enhance their life. It's not all good time spent with technology anymore. Just as an example, the average person in the United States spends 2 hours and 14 minutes a day on social media. Here's the thought that I have for those people is, and again, this is just the average person. Let's say you just cut that time in half. I'm not saying you even got rid of social media use, just cut it in half. And then you spent that extra hour you had per day with the people that you care about and love in your life, whether that's your spouse, your good friends, your children, doesn't really matter who it is, but you spend it with someone you cared about, I guarantee you that your life would be so much better because you're spending time with people you care about. And the sense of connection and love and support between you and those people would really be much greater than if you spent that time on social media.
Yeah, thank you again, Rob. When you and I were chatting on pre-call, and it looked like we talked a lot that day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Uh, so let me refresh or remind what you and I chatted, right? Um, Remember that show that you and I talked about for the Ellen's show, and just
Yeah.
talked about, right? So there was a kid who actually got challenged by by his mother, saying that you're gonna be not using social media till the age of 18, and we'll give you, what is it, 1,500 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and guess what? He actually got the 1,500. He was thinking that he was going to go and buy a house, buy a car, buy insurance. That's a different topic altogether. That 1,500 is not enough. But the
Hmm.
thought process that the child was thinking is that, wow, that is a challenge that I think I want to take. Do you think we should take those extreme challenges to the kids, or even to ourselves, for that matter? I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Rob?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. And I appreciate that you brought that up, Girish, because I really thought that was a great example of how this could go for certain people, right? With the Ellen show. I think I like that people challenge themselves. No, I don't necessarily think it has to be monetarily driven like that. I think that there are some positives and negatives of motivating kids with money. But let's just say, for instance, you had a bet with a good friend instead of making it a parent paying a child $1,500. Let's say you bet a friend a nice dinner, maybe it costs $100, right, that you would not use social media for a month. The thing is, we could sit here, you and I could sit here and talk all day about how much different your life would be if you didn't use social media or didn't have it on your phone or blah blah blah, but you're not really going to know or truly understand that until you actually do it. And so I think that if there's anything that motivates people to actually make a change, even if it's perceived to be temporary, right? Like even if they say to themselves, "Oh, I'm only going to stop using social media for a week." When they actually do that thing, it really becomes much more obvious how impactful this was to their life and how much their life is different. And so I am in favor of getting someone to take that leap and make that change, even if it's temporary. And even if there is some monetary, wager, I actually think that having a little skin in the game makes it interesting and makes the person more committed. But I don't necessarily think it has to only be monetarily related. Maybe it's just, hey, you tell your friend, I think I can do it. And they say, BS, I don't think you can. And now it's kind of your reputation on the line. That to me is almost more interesting than having any money involved. But that's just me personally.
Yeah, that's true. Just very quickly, Rob, when I don't know how many years ago, but I actually made a challenge for myself for not going on social media for at
Mm,
least 10 months, right? Just to challenge myself that if I can do that. And I
love it.
did. And I did.
Nice.
And now the thing is that when I go back into the social media, my thought process has kind of changed in a way. Like for example, if it is your birthday, why do I need to tell everyone that it's your birthday and wish you a birthday? Why can't I text you privately or message you privately saying happy birthday, right? uh,
Yes.
so I think the change thought process has kind of changed for me, so I hopefully that kind of helps everybody else, including yourself, Rob. So thank you again for listening to that, and hopefully you'll agree to what I'm saying here.
Oh, totally. I really, oh, I'm glad that you did that experiment on yourself, Girish. And I guess one of the other things that I would say related to what you just said is, don't you think that it's going to be more meaningful to that person if you text them instead of, like let's say 20 people text them for their birthday, but 200 people post on their wall for their birthday? Don't you think that it's actually going to be more meaningful to that person that you text them? Or, oh my gosh, you could even give them a phone call if you really cared about them. How many people give a phone call and leave a voicemail for their birthday? One, two, zero, maybe. It will be so much more meaningful to that person if you text or call them versus writing on their wall. And I just don't think people think about that. But I specifically make points to, to reach out to people individually when it is their birthday instead of doing it on people's walls.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that makes it more personalized when you're actually wishing that person. I mean, that's how I feel on that part. Rob, thank you again for explaining, and thank you again for understanding what I'm saying here. So this work life balance that you're talking about, right? First of all, before we get into the details of that, what does work life balance mean to you? Because it seems like this word has been overused, or I think just overly used. What are your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right, that people have this concept of work-life balance because I'm not really sure that there is a difference between work and life. I mean, I'm still the same human when I'm working as when I'm not working. It's not like I some switch magically flips in me and I'm like a different person. Or the other thing is I still have the same quantity of energy to do work-related things versus personal things, right? And to me, I think more not about work-life balance, but managing my energy and my effort in the things that I'm doing, whether that is work related or personally related. And, to me, the thing that I'm seeing is that technology is, and again, like this is very unconscious for most people. They don't even realize this is happening. But I think for the average person, technology is sucking up a lot of our time and energy and effort, and it's not really returning a lot to us. And that time, effort, and energy could be used for way more important things like doing really meaningful work that moves your business forward or fostering strong relationships with the people you really care about. Those things to me are the most important. But I think that the vast majority of energy these days is not used for those things. It's used for menial, mundane stuff that technology sucks us into that we just do because we think we need to, but it's not really that important.
So Rob, so you're saying instead of using the word work life balance, I think the word that we should be using is time management.
I would say energy management because I think of it's not because for instance I might spend an entire day reading a book and taking notes, and to some people that would drain their energy, but to me that actually energizes me. Like at the end of that day I'm like, yes, I learned so much stuff and I want to talk to my wife about it even though she doesn't want to hear about it. And that to me is like really energizing. And so at the end of a day like that, for some people, they would be like, oh my God, I can't move another inch and I just want to go to sleep. I'm like, yeah, let's get in a workout. Let's talk to people. Let's do stuff because I was energized by that. So I pay attention to what, I manage my energy and what activities accelerate it or amplified and what activities suck it away or take it away more
Yeah.
than balance, this concept of balance.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob, for that. On your website, your mission is that we're leading companies into the 4 day work week. Now, what do we do for the rest 3 days?
Whatever you want, I don't care.
Oh, well,
Again,
I mean, that's a joke, but I mean, so what is the thought process of that 4-day work week? I mean, what are your thoughts on that part?
yeah. So, what's interesting is the concept. So, humans used to, this is 3 or 4, 500 years ago. Humans used to work 7 days a week because we basically needed to in order to hunt and gather and, get food, right? Like we needed food to survive. And if you didn't have food, you don't survive. And so you have to work as much as you can to get food. So that then, but once we became a much more advanced society and we had, machines and things like that and steam engine and all this stuff, we didn't need to work quite as much. And so as a society in America, we will just say downshifted from a 6 day work week to a 5 day work week in the year 1926. And that was done by Henry Ford with, the manufacturing line and things like that. So think about this though. We are still working in a practice or with a practice that is about 100 years old. And look at how different life is in the present compared to 1926. I mean, we have supercomputers and cell phones in our pockets and car like super fast cars and all these things. Like there's so many things around us that have changed, yet we're still working this 5 day work week. That's totally mind-blowing to me. And it's time for us to do something different. It's time for us to change our thinking in this because we don't actually need to work 5 days per week. If you are very mindful of how you use your technology, and that's essentially how I talk about this entire field, is I call it technology mindfulness. If you're mindful of how you use your technology and you use it in the correct way, or I shouldn't say correct way, but if you use it in a way that serves you well, you really can get more than you can get all your work done in 4 days per week. And by the way, when I say 4 day work week, I mean 4 8-hour days, not 4 10-hour days. And I also mean the same pay. So you're literally working one entire less day per week, 30, let's say 32 hours for a standard week, and you're getting the same amount of pay. It's incredible.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about the 10 hours versus the 8 hours. So that's good that you explained that. But let me give you another twist and hopefully it'll make it worse or make it better. I'm not really sure.
Sure.
Um, in the corporate world, we usually go, let's say on a Monday from 9 to 5 job, right? And we are chit chatting with other folks and, your bosses and other companies, or I should say, other organizations, having coffee, having a chit chat, having a walk, having lunch, and then you're working, right? But if you do that calculation, that's a total of maybe 3 hours of work, 4 hours of actual work. So now it's not even 8 hours; it's actually 4 hours. So with your calculation, that's what 16 hours total for the week. I mean, what are your thoughts on that part?
Oh yeah. So actually, I have a bunch of data for this. I love data and studies, right? So in 2012, and I wish it was a newer study, but in 2012, McKinsey did this study. And so again, it's a decade ago. I'm sure it would be different and actually even worse today. But what they did is they followed around these white collar workers for an entire week and they looked at all the ways that they use their time and then they put them in the buckets. And what they found at the end of the study was that the average white collar worker only spent 39% of their week doing work related tasks. And the other, or I should say, position specific tasks. And then the other 61% was essentially spent on job like not specific BS tasks that are really not super necessary, like collaboration, checking email, meetings, searching on the internet. Again, like I'm not saying you can get rid of all those things. Of course, some of them are necessary. But the point is, we're really only spending 39% of our work week doing our actual job, and the other 61% is mostly busy work BS. And so, even if you can just cut the BS in half, that's a day and a half of work right there every week that you
Yeah,
could save.
that is so true. Actually, I'm on your site. Actually, it says the average worker productive hours is 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Yeah, about 2.5
So,
hours a
so
day,
I said
right?
4. So I mean, that's even less than what I actually said. So
Well, and
so
if you
thank
don't, I know another way to kind of like back into that though is to think about it like this. So the average white collar worker sends and receives 126 emails per day. That equates to about 4 hours per day of email, right? Which is
mm,
only 2 minutes per email, assuming that. And then if you have 2 hours of meetings, right? So that's 4 hours for email, 2 hours for meetings in an 8 hour day. that adds up to about 2 hours left to do your job, or around 2.5 hours. Not
Mm.
surprising. Like, the numbers add up no matter how many different ways you try to calculate them. It really comes to most people only spend like 2 to 3 hours doing their job every day, and the other stuff is wasted.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again for that. Let me ask you a different question here about meetings, right? The corporate world meetings that we have, right? Um, let's take our example. We actually had a pre-call before the show.
Hmm?
So is that considered a waste of time, or is that considered productivity time to get onto the show? Just like in the corporate world, they go for a meeting to a meeting to a meeting, and nothing really gets resolved. I mean, there are two scenarios here. So you tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't think it was unproductive time at all. I mean, me getting to know you, and you getting to know me, like, we're building rapport and getting to know each other. I like that. I find that those kinds of things interesting. I mean, that's honestly why, one of the reasons why I like going on podcasts, is I like to talk to interesting people and, get to understand what they're about. And so, I do think though that in corporate America, there are a lot of times, and this happened to me when I was in corporate America. I worked at an investment bank. There was, at the time I was hired, there was like 2,700 employees. So it wasn't small, it wasn't huge, but it definitely wasn't small. And, there were some points where I was in meetings. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm spending my life in this meeting right now. There are just so many other things that I wish I could be doing. And I just believe that I could have read a summary of this meeting and understood 95% of what was said, and I didn't have to be present for the whole hour. Like, why am I here? And so again, can we eliminate all meetings? No, I don't think that it's a good idea. But I think there are many times when there are many meetings that are held that either have way too many participants, or the meeting didn't even need to take place to begin with, but it's still being held for other reasons, like a manager wants to look good, or people need to have them because it's some part of some sort of agreement or something, or whatever. There's a million reasons. But my thought is, hey, even if you could reduce 50% of the meetings you attend, that for the average person would probably be about an hour a day. And that's about a half a work day every week right there. Like, that's amazing. Like, why don't we want to do that?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we're thank you, Rob, for explaining that. With the productivity hours that we work, the emails that we check, the meetings that we go, don't you think that after all that, corporate companies should understand that there are burnouts, and we should have a backup plan when these burnouts happen? I mean, I'm pretty sure people are getting burnt out with all these things happening, right?
Well, that's, see, and that Girish is this is the insight that I think I have, that no companies are understanding this. The reason why people are burned out is because of how much they use technology. It's the root cause. And here's why I believe this, right? So let me, like, I can talk a little bit about some brain chemistry here that I think is very important. So a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time when we interact with our technology, what it does is it activates our sympathetic nervous system. This is the fight or flight system that keeps us alive when we perceive there's a threat. And so, for instance, when we check our email, or when we get a notification on our smartphone, it activates the sympathetic nervous system and gets us amped up, right? It kind of makes us feel awake, but it also can, like, make you almost feel like too awake, like too amped up, as if a robber broke into your house. Like, that would activate your sympathetic nervous system. Well, the problem is that this sympathetic nervous system takes at least 30 minutes to fully downregulate or recover, and sometimes even longer. And we check our email and Slack once every 6 minutes, and we get a smartphone notification once every 15 minutes. And so, if you're doing the math, you're saying to yourself, well, yeah, we're constantly amping up our sympathetic nervous system, and it never has a chance to recover and downregulate. And this is why so many people feel stressed out, anxious, and burned out. Our nervous system is getting activated and amped up the entire day from our technology use, and then it never gets back down to a point where we're relaxed and calm and can do good work. And this is happening to literally over half of the US population today. Over 50% of US workers are stressed out or burned out. It's the highest reading we have ever had. And I truly believe that all this technology use is the root cause of it.
But you usually the thank you again, Rob, for that. So burnout, um, from a health point of view, is not good either, right? So here we go back again with work-life balance, or should I say energy management, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
what we're trying to say is that there's positive and negatives. There's uh, yin and yang, and pros and cons to everything, right? But I think you, as a worker, you should make your own judgment. What is good for you and what is bad for you? What are your thoughts on that part, Rob?
Yeah, well, the problem is that a lot of, and again, this happened to me, right? When I worked at this investment bank, I didn't realize it, but I literally had two computer screens. One where my email was up all the time, literally the entire time, and the other one was where I would do a lot of my work, right? A lot of my job. And so I would constantly be checking my email while I was doing other things, switching back and forth. And it was a very, intense job. It was a 60-hour week job, and it was very difficult. And so it was stressful to me, but I didn't realize it at the time. And then I was in like my mid 20s, and I started losing my hair, and it was because of the stress of the job. But again, I didn't realize that at the time. And so, what the problem is that the average person doesn't even know that the reason that they're stressed out is because of how much they're using their technology. They just think it's, oh, like the job itself. And obviously it could be the job itself, but I think the actual root cause is the technology use. But they say to themselves, oh, it's it's COVID and the situation, or it's my job, or it's my kids, or whatever. Like there's a million other reasons, right? And so once people, what like with my clients, once they change their technology use, they're like, "Oh my god, it's like a different job. It's like I'm a different person. I can relax again. I'm calm again." And they just didn't even know. It wasn't even on their radar that this was affecting them like that. So the reason I mention this is the average person has no awareness that the technology use is harming them, and therefore they don't know how to fix it. Because if you're not aware of it, you can't fix it. And so that's why the 4-day work week, one of the main benefits is a reduction of stress and burnout, and a greater engagement and higher quality work. Because when people have this extra day to do whatever, be with their family, travel, I don't care, they get to down regulate and recover, and they get to be in a more rest and digest mode instead of being in this amped up sympathetic fight or flight mode. And that extra day allows them to recover better and stay at their job longer, as well as do higher quality work.
Yeah, Rob, thank you again for all those small nuggets and the golden nuggets that you're sharing. But before you leave today, Rob, and I could go on and on when we talking about this, because we did talk about this even offline, and it seems like you and I are pretty much on the same wavelength when it comes to burnouts, time management, work-life balance, or in your case, energy management, right? So before you leave, do you have any last words to all my viewers and my listeners? And how is your journey on Back to Basics too? On top of that.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate chatting with you, Girish, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. This has definitely been a great experience, and I enjoy the conversation. I guess the last thought that I would leave with the listeners is this: the amount of love, success, and happiness in this world are infinite. And so imagine how much love, success, and happiness we could all have together if we all decided to put humans first.
Wow, thank you so much, Rob, for coming here, and thank you so much for being human first and coming here on this show. So, thank you again, and thank you for all the support that you've given to Back to Basics, and we'll keep on chatting even offline.
Thank you so much, Girish. Take care.
Thank you. So, guys, we spoke with Rob today, and we talked about humans first, right? And it was nothing to do with religion at all, was it? So I tricked you on the first part. But I'll tell you one thing: we learned a lot. There's a lot of things around us that we come up with excuses: the technology, the health, and taking care of everyone else. And there's always something happening. But there's one thing that you can control, which is time management, or in his case, energy management. Now, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and hopefully my guest will like it. And here's the quote. The quote is: whenever you find yourself on the side of majorities, it is time to pause and reflect. Now, What is wrong with just being paused, an active pause? And that's what we're trying to do. So guys, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and keep on commenting on all the episodes that I do, because it does help me from your feedback, because I do release every day. And we're very close towards the end of season 2. And there are 3 things, according to this episode, which is successful for me, that is, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, keep on commenting, and listen, we're very close towards the end of season 2. And season 3 is going to be as smashing as season 2 has been. Now, next season, we will be releasing all the motivational speakers on Wednesdays as a back to basic mode wisdom. And there's a separate podcast for that. So keep tuned, stay tuned, subscribe to that, and keep on commenting and review all the stuff that I do. Take care, God bless, and I will see you next time on Back to Basics. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Hi friends, Renee Patterson with Able the Disabled. I recently had the pleasure of being on a podcast by the name of Back2Basics. This podcast believes in keeping things simple, not overcomplicating things like we have a tendency to do. This organization, I'm telling you, is professional. They asked great questions, and they gave me an opportunity to talk about my journey through my disability. I hope you guys get a chance to listen to this podcast when it becomes available, which is going to be sometime in September. I look forward to you listening. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.